Sharing economy is kind of my bag. To give you a brief bit of what I do, I used to work in TV. I am part of Learn, Do, Share, and we sort of create collaborative games, and I do workshop facilitation and all this kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you specifically about what I did last year. But I wanted to start by saying I almost wasn't here, because next week I was actually expected to give birth. So that's why I'm a bit nervous and a bit all over the place. But 3 weeks ago, this little man was born. So he's with his dad at the moment, but I got to be here and talk to you guys. What's kind of cool about him being born a whole month early was he was born on the 1st of September, and he was the start of a big grand adventure in my life, I guess. But last year, I also started a big grand adventure on the 1st of September, and it was my adventure into the sharing economy. So I did a month-long experiment in the sharing economy where I lived only off what I could make and save in the sharing economy. I did it in one of the most expensive cities in the world. No, not Sydney, London, but probably only just because I think Sydney's getting up there. I did it with not very much stuff, which was a little bit tricky, but it was a very interesting experiment in what the sharing economy felt like when you really immersed yourself into it. I'm sure everyone here knows the definition of the sharing economy, but I thought I'd share the one that I like the best, which is the sharing economy is a socio-economic ecosystem built around the sharing of human and physical resources. The problem with this term is it's really sexy. It's a really nice term. It makes businesses kind of sound better. So a lot of platforms, a lot of places have co-opted it when really they don't have very much to do with sharing, but I'll get to that a bit later. So why do an experiment in the sharing economy? Well, it started with a topless Frenchie. My beautiful red Peugeot convertible. I love this car. I used to love driving with the top down. But then I moved to Newtown and I really couldn't justify having a car that was costing me insurance, was difficult to park, all of these expenses. So I was about to sell her when I came across a platform called Car Next Door. If you haven't heard of Car Next Door, you should. They're an amazing bunch of people and they've got an amazing idea, just got a huge injection of funding from Caltex. But it's a platform that allows you to rent your car to your neighbours. So I started renting out my car. The first time someone came and picked up my car, I was so nervous. I watched them drive away kind of badly down my street, which is kind of narrow in Newtown, going, oh my God, what have I done? But you know what, it came back and it was fine. And then I started seeing money being deposited in my bank account and all of those fears just disappeared. Every month I was covering all of my insurance. I never paid for petrol. 1 month I made $400. Like that is a lot of money for doing absolutely nothing apart from keeping your car vaguely clean, which was fairly easy. But there was something better than $400 a month for doing nothing. And it happened when one of the car windows got stuck, which, you know, if anyone's ever owned a Peugeot is, you know, the story of your car's life. So I had to phone the people who'd borrowed the car on the weekend and tell them that it was going to be in the mechanic. And I was pretty nervous about doing this because I thought they would be angry or upset that suddenly it wasn't going to be available. But they weren't. In fact, they were really nice about it. And then I got talking to this guy, Dave, who used to borrow my car every Sunday, and he told me that he would come, take my car, he would drive to his mum's retirement village, he'd pick her up, they'd put the top down and they'd go for a drive. And that's what they did every Sunday. And I suddenly went, you know what, like that is an amazing use for my car. That is much better than I could ever use it. And I started to look at my car differently, like it was just a thing and I happen to own it, but everyone should be able to use it. And that's when I started to get interested in the sharing economy. Now, at the time I was working in TV development, and when you work in development, you're always kind of on the lookout for any kind of human behaviour that's really interesting. So I went, well, the world needs a show about the sharing economy. So I pitched the show, we pitched it to Australian networks and international networks, got a lot of interest, but everyone kept saying, well, can you actually live in the sharing economy? And no one had done it. So I stupidly went, I'll do it. I'm in London, I can do it. And it was hard. It was really hard, but it was also really fun. So let's rewind back to September 1st, 2015. I was staying with my aunt and uncle about to embark on this crazy adventure, and I started with no money. So I needed to find some free accommodation. So the first thing I did was couch surfing. Who, put your hand up if you've heard of couch surfing. Put your hand up if you've actually couch surfed. Oh, okay, a few people, cool. So if you've done it, you sort of know it's a really interesting experience. I got lots of propositions. I got offered a room by a nudist. Yes, I would have had to not wear clothes for the length of my stay. And finally, I found a room kind of at the last minute in North London with a Slovakian girl who I'd kind of roughly talked to but didn't really know very much about. And I headed to North London slightly terrified. Let's see if I can play this. So, I'm about to walk into my first couch surfing host apartment. My host isn't actually going to be here tonight. She's out at a gig and won't get home until 1 a.m. But I've spoken to her housemate Maria and she's going to let me in. I'm not quite sure what to expect. I don't know anything about them. I haven't seen any photos of the apartment or the room. I've read a little bit about Vlasta. I know she's from Slovakia and that she's 35 and that she sounds a lot like me. But apart from that, I don't know anything. So if I don't come back from this, if you don't hear another post from me, tell my parents or my boyfriend that I love them and give all my stuff away to charity, a good charity. But as you can see, it was okay because I'm here. And in fact, it was more than okay. And this is something that I've found again and again in the sharing economy. In the end, Vlasta ended up being a professional photographer. I was starting to write articles for all of these media publications who wanted photos, so she took photos for me. She made me some crazy Slovakian dish, which was delicious. And in fact, this year in Menorca, we caught up and saw each other again, and we're still in contact a year later. So this is kind of what I kept finding in the sharing economy, especially when things were transactions that happened for free, was that there was a value around that transaction. I like to call it ambient value. It was the value of the things that you didn't expect. There were these little serendipities that kind of happened because you were being social as opposed to being transactional. So during my stay, I did, these are not even all of them, these are just the ones whose logos I could find. These were some of the platforms I experimented with. I'll give you a quick little rundown of some of the ones that you haven't heard of because I'm sure you've heard of Airbnb and Uber and all of that. So Karma's an interesting one. They're a platform that really works on reputation. They work by, so the sharing economy is based on the ability to commoditize reputation. So we were able to review people and therefore we're able to kind of say, well, we can trust this person because they have so many different reviews. What Karma does is they pull those reviews in from different sites. So you can use your Airbnb review for BlaBlaCar or vice versa. So the interesting site. There's another one called Trayety, which kind of does the same thing. Grub Club is a really cool one. It's a similar concept to Meal Shared here, which is where you can host a pop-up restaurant. I went to an amazing Armenian feast, which a lovely lady called Natalie did. And again, it was this kind of cool thing where I paid, I went to her house, had this amazing meal, but met her friends who I ended up becoming friends with, who worked for some newspapers, which I ended up getting my articles into, and this kind of snowball of amazing things happened. Rendezvous, you can rent out your wardrobe. Variable, you can host your own tour. I did a tour of London through the movies, so you could like see different movie sites from different landmarks from movie sites. Olio is a really great one. This is a really clever one. So this is for food sharing. So if you have some food that you're not going to eat that's going to go out of code, you can put it on Olio and people can choose to come and get it for you, or they can get it from local convenience shops. And this is clever because, especially in London, local convenience shops are really having a tough time because, you know, they've got their big Tesco's and Sainsbury's that are taking a lot of market share from these convenience shops. But if you are going, and I'm going to go and buy someone's pasta that's going out of code, I'm also going to need a jar of sauce. So the convenience shop might have that, and so I buy that and off I go. Very clever. They're doing really well, actually, those ladies. Blah Blah Car is about sharing lifts. It's funny that it isn't here yet because it would work kind of well in Australia, you know, if you were driving from Sydney to Goulburn or something, you know, that's kind of the distances that you normally do. Good Gym is actually my personal favourite. This is an amazing concept where it teams up runners with isolated elderly people. So if I'm a runner and I want to train for a half marathon or something, the Good Gym will give me a program. They'll team me up with an isolated elderly person, otherwise known as a couch. And then I'll run to their house. I'll spend anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes chatting to them, having a cup of tea, doing some stretches or something, and then I'll run back. Now, the benefit of this for the isolated elderly person is easy. You know, they get some company, they get someone who's interested in what they have to say, who comes and visits regularly. For the runner, it's a reason to get out of bed when it's cold. And if any one of you have ever trained for any running thing, that's a huge thing because it's so easy to stay in your bed. It's working really well. They've got funding from a big insurance company in the UK. They also do another type of program where you can do group runs and then you run to a location, you do some community work. I did some pruning in a community garden, which was a bit dangerous given that I don't have a green thumb at all. And then everyone ran back. And again, there's no money or anything involved in this, but you feel so good after doing it, and you knowing that you've helped the community is really valuable. So, what did I discover in my month in the sharing economy? Well, basically 4 things, and I'll run through them. Okay, it's easy to make money when you're sharing stuff. So the sharing economy works well by utilising underutilised assets. So the sharing economy kind of allows you to turn things that would normally be a liability into an asset, things from like a car, where you know normally it's just outgoings, or even like things like drills or clothes or whatever, into an asset where you can actually earn money from it. You know, there's a famous thing about, I think, Rachel Botsman, although I don't know whether the statistic has ever been substantiated because I've never been able to find it, that like the average drill is used for 18 minutes in its life. Now, you don't need a drill, you need a hole. You don't need a car, you need a ride. Like if we switch our thinking from having to what do we actually need, the sharing economy makes good sense, and it's better for the planet and better for the community. But it's really hard when you're sharing your time. So one of the big things that kind of happened to me when I was in London doing the experiment was I didn't have a lot of stuff. I just had a bag full of clothes. So I had to rely a lot on what is actually termed the gig economy. As I said before, the sharing economy is this really sexy umbrella term and people use it for everything. But really, they're kind of little divisions within that sharing economy term, and the gig economy is one of them. So this is stuff like Fiverr, Freelancer, TaskRabbit, Airtasker, all of these. Uber is another example. It's really hard with your time because you're competing in this different kind of landscape, especially on things like Fiverr or Freelancer. You know, like if you're not prepared to work for $5 an hour, someone in a developing country is. And because you have a certain degree of anonymity because you're dealing with people online, I think it can drive prices down and really people don't kind of respect the work you do. I wrote an article, if anyone wants I can send it to you, you can find it on the HuffPost, called Why the Gig Economy is Like a Bad Boyfriend. I feel very passionately about the gig economy. I think there are ways that you can make it work, but it is harder, it is difficult. We act differently when money is removed. One of the clever things that I think Uber and Airbnb did was they put the transaction before or after the actual moment that you get in and have that experience. Because I think people act on 2 different levels. They act on an analytical level and they act on a social level. So when you're creating a transaction, you're thinking with your brain, oh, is this good value? How much money do I have? All of these kind of things are running through your head. Whereas if that's taken out of the picture, you're kind of going, oh, my driver's really nice, and look at this beautiful house that I've got on Airbnb. You think kind of differently. What's even better than delaying the transaction or moving it to a point that's not the experience is having no money at all involved. And look, this is where, for me, the real beauty of the sharing economy lies. It's things like house sitting, food sharing, skill swaps, where you actually don't need money at all. And I think those are the things where you kind of walk into it with this big open heart and you end up having these amazing serendipities and coincidences occur. Okay, and the biggest moments of ambient value. Human beings are hardwired for sharing. They've done studies on bonobo monkeys who naturally share food. Children, I think it's up until the age of 5 or so, are naturally cooperative. They want to help. They want to do good things by whoever they're working with. And I can say from my experiment, I was certainly happiest when I was doing something selfless, when I was driving around in a van collecting food for the homeless, or when I was running my thing, you know. I felt good about myself. I felt engaged and part of a community. And I think that's sort of what we're missing a little bit in today's society. Okay, so after my experiment, I wrote a book. I had found, everyone's got a book today. I'd found that a lot of people knew about Airbnb and Uber, and they didn't know about all these other amazing platforms. And so I wrote about all of them. There's over 300 platforms in the book. There are some amazing ones, like there's one here called Mama Bake. So it encourages mothers to form little groups together, make one big batch meal, and then get together and share it. So they have 5 different meals for the effort of cooking one. There's another Australian, again, platform called Find Me a Grandparent, which if you're like me and didn't grow up with grandparents in the country, is a really nice way to connect with an older generation. There's another one that I love as well called Casserole Club, which is, again, helping isolated elderly people. You cook a meal for dinner, you cook a little bit extra, and then the next day you take it around and you have a chat and you give it to someone who needs some company and might not, you know, be able to make stuff for themselves. So you can, if you want to read it, the first 30 pages are available on the website, but if you email me, I'll send you a copy, like it's totally fine. I'm also working on a new book at the moment that talks about, or investigates the ethics and impacts of new technology, like on the next generation, called Our Children's Future. And it's interesting because we're going to be talking about blockchain this afternoon, and that is one thing that I'm incredibly excited about for the sharing economy. One of the big problems that I found in the sharing economy is, say for example, a platform like Fiverr. Fiverr takes 20% of what you earn. So you earn $5, they take $1. So you earn $4, which is not a lot of money for a gig. One of the things that I think the blockchain will enable sharing economy groups to do is to kind of form collectives where they don't need that third party to handle all of that administration. And I'm very excited about what will happen there. I've also developed a sharing game. As I said, my background is developing creative collaboration games and doing co-design workshops and stuff, as well as working in TV. And so it's been really fun to put together something around the sharing economy. The game's still in beta, so if anyone has a group that might want to play it, let me know. I want to test it a lot more before I, take it out wider. So that offer's there. And lastly, the future of the sharing economy. So the sharing economy had a lot of media attention for a long time, and it started to die down now. But I don't think that means that it's stopped. I think that we probably won't have another Uber or Airbnb or something that's that big, but we're going to see more and more platforms coming in special niche areas and hopefully in local areas. I think that platform ownership, or platform cooperativism, so where people who use the service own the service, is going to be something. I think there's a lot of noise about it in the sharing economy industry, but that's where we want to go, and the blockchain will definitely help that. I also think that governments and councils are getting involved in this. I've been having a lot of discussions with the Labor Party and Andrew Lee, who's the Assistant Treasurer and the Shadow Minister for Competition. He's really interested in this. He's been doing a lot of research and had a lot of discussion papers on this. So hopefully sometime in the future we'll actually have government involvement. But ultimately for me, I guess if I can leave you with anything, is that sharing economy it's a great term, but it's not new. I mean, yeah, we've got new technology that makes things easier, but we've been doing this for centuries. We've been bartering and trading and sharing with people for centuries, and I think it's part of human nature, and that this is going to continue. And as the wonderful Leonard Nimoy says, I really believe that the miracle is the more we share, the more we have. Thank you so much.